back?
Oh, I did everything I could to possibly sign Stone Cold Steve Austin. I gave him a tremendous offer, you know, and he has decided on his own to go out on his own. That's not to say that he won't be back one day. The doors are open, you know, but again, this is Steve's decision, you know, and Steve, you know, is
Does
very
he owe
strong-willed.
you something, Vince? Because in a lot of ways, you took him back when he was very troubled, and you welcomed him back into the company when it would have been easy. Now, I'm not saying you didn't make money at that point off him, but you could have turned your back on a guy that was kind of dirty for a time.
Well, he walked out on us twice, and he was forgiven both times. And it hurt the entire company. It hurt all of the performers when you just walk out like that and you leave everyone hanging. Steve recognized the error of his ways, and when we got back together, and this last go-round was a lot of fun for both of us, but again, the physical limitations that he has, he can't compete. So if he can't compete, you can only pretend that he can compete for so long, and the public says, well, how come he's not in the ring, you know? So there are other production aspects of this that you can only go so far with a character that you can't make the money off of in terms of live events and pay-per-view and whatever, and he's taking up space now that some young buck, you know, might have an opportunity for themselves.
And we'll discuss that issue because obviously it's all about finding that young buck. So are you saying to us that as the wrestler we do, Stone Cold is done?
Yes, I mean, he definitely is. I mean, there's no question about that. That's not to say that he still doesn't have value to our organization.
Because you've used guys in another capacity. Obviously, you flirted that with Mick Foley, you know, from time to time, knowing that he couldn't do what he used to do in the ring, but there's still a value because of his charisma.
Oh, you know, Stone Cold will always have value, and when you mention the name Stone Cold, it is like mentioning the name Babe Ruth in baseball.
Could he cross over? The way The Rock has crossed over, do you think there's, maybe not with that kind of success, but do you think that he could make the leap into another world?
Actually, my whole thought of Stone Cold was one that his future was not in the ring any longer. His future really was in film. And we had a film written for him called The Marine. And that's where we thought Steve's future was going to be. And but again, it required him signing, you know, an agreement to be with the company.
So he turned it down.
So he turned it down, you know. But again, I think that in a way, I don't think he can be The Rock, you know, but he was never that type of individual. But I think, can Steve do a crossover into Hollywood, you know, with the right script? And I think absolutely he could.
Do you deal with him one-on-one, or do you deal with his lawyers and his team? Because I want to compare it to the old days, because I would imagine you still see yourself as a wrestling guy as opposed to a businessman wearing a suit. And how does...
Yeah, I do.
So do you get to deal with him, or is it now all about the lawyers and the agents and the whole team that comes in that negotiates on his behalf?
I much prefer dealing with the talent, straight away, man-to-man. And naturally, I think they should have a representation in terms of their attorneys, because you want everyone to look over what it is you're doing and whatever, and make sure that it's a fair deal and whatever. But at the same time, when an attorney who knows nothing about your business tries to tell you, well, this guy needs this, he needs that, and these are totally unreasonable requests, it sours the relationship. You know, there's no doubt about that. You know, and that was actually the case with Stone Cold as well. His attorney was one that I did not get along with at all. I told him so. You know me, I'm a big mouth. If I don't like you, I'm going to tell you.
I believe that,
you know?
Vince. I do.
No.
I don't think you'd hold anything back. So we're warmed up and ready to go. We got to talk about some Canadians, right?
Okay, good.
We got to talk to about Chris Jericho, right? Good Canadian boy from Tampa.
Well,
we'll talk about that when OTR returns. You got this great roster of talent, Vince McMahon, led in a large part by Canadians. I mean, you have this huge representation of Canadians from all across this country, and then someone tunes into one of your shows and they hear Chris Benoit from Atlanta. Now, guys like me and probably 500,000 others watching this show get upset about that. Why did you do that, and do you regret it? Because I know you changed back.
Well, we really haven't changed back. You know.
Guess you don't regret it then.
Yeah. Well, I think this, that when Chris Benoit became world champion, Chris, of course, has been living in the States for well over 10 years and living in Atlanta. So don't look at me that way.
No, I'm looking at you this way. It doesn't matter whether he's living there. He's only living there because it's convenient. But he's from Canada.
Well, he's living there because he prefers it.
No, I don't. He's the Canadian crippler.
I know, right. I mean, look, it's okay for a Canadian to live in America. I mean, I think that's fine.
I wasn't looking for permission. I mean,
it's all right for
I don't want to live in your country, but that's okay. I mean,
I wouldn't mind living in Canada. I like it up here. It's great.
Wait till April 30th. That's tax day.
Oh,
you won't like it so much.
Oh, okay.
No. Okay, so Chris Benoit from Atlanta, right? Chris Jericho from New York.
Now residing in Atlanta.
Edge from Tampa.
We're not saying Edge is from Toronto.
But you weren't trying to be factually correct, Vince. You weren't saying, well, you weren't trying to be factually correct in going, well, I mean, technically these people are living in those cities, so we have to be true to where they're residing.
I really, no, I was using that, you know, as a way to increase their popularity in the States. Not the fact that they're transplanted Canadians, you know, and they're living, you know, could I hang my hat on the fact that most of them live in Tampa, or that Benoit's lived in Atlanta for over 10 years.
Why is Christian from Toronto?
Christian's a heel.
Oh, so it's you know, so that's what it's about. It's about the work.
It's about the popularity, you know, of a performer.
Why can't we be good guys, Vince?
Well, you can, but there's a bias in the United States in terms of Canadians. I dare say there's a bias in Canada in terms of those from the United States, but not as strong.
Does that date back to the Hart Foundation and all of what that brought, which I still to this day, when we talk to Bret Hart about it, and he and I have gotten to be pretty good friends through the show. I don't like dropping names, but he's a guy that I feel, no, it's true, I feel a ton of warmth for him. He says the greatest time in his life in terms of wrestling was that period of time.
Right. It was a good time.
Right. And so it still goes back to that, the fact that, you know, making the Canadian the heel is a good thing.
And conversely, when you come over here to Canada, a lot of the, you know, the baby faces, Americans, are heels in terms of Canada, depending on if they're working with Canadians or not.
So what do you say to Canadian fans who love Chris Benoit, the Canadian crippler?
I would say continue to love him. You know, we certainly don't hide the fact that he was, you know, born in Montreal, grew up in Edmonton. You know, we're proud of that.
You're a smart man, Vince. No,
I'm not.
You're trying to show, hey,
no,
I know where he's from.
You know, but we don't hide that fact. I mean, he's proudly from Edmonton. We'll tell you so in every interview that you ever do. So if he's now residing in Atlanta, which he is, that's factual. At the same time, in the image of the biased American, you know, it helps Benoit's image.
Bret Hart, you know where he's living?
Yes, I do.
He's living in Calgary, and you know that, of course, because the Hart family is unbelievably well known, and you know that family, and but you visited him, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, tell me about your meeting, because I've heard some stuff, and I want you to tell me, as it relates to wrestling, of course.
Well, it was really nice to meet with Bret. My son Shane and I did. Bret was an hour late for the meeting, which is Bret's style. He was watching the Flames. You know, of course, we were too. But I didn't tell him that when he arrived an hour late. I said, where the hell have you been? You know, he said, well, I got caught in traffic. I was a little bit late, and I was watching the Flames. So it was really good to see Bret, you know, and Bret and I at one time were very, very close. I'd like to think that we still are.
But he hated you in between the time you were close and where you are now, right?
I think he probably did. You know, I don't.
Oh no, he did.
You know, the feeling.
He did. I mean, this
good.
is not probably. He hated you.
You know what? If you hate someone, I think you have to care. You know, if you...
Oh, he would be the first to admit that, Vince, that he could only hate you because you were so close and you meant so much to his life. And he felt betrayed by you.
Right. And that's really unfortunate. It was an unfortunate time in my life, an unfortunate time in Bret's life. And, you know, I'd like to apologize if I could for that situation, but I find myself in a situation of, look, would I do that all over again? I probably would. You know, so an apology would not be the right thing to do. Certainly opening my arms and, you know, for the company and for all of Bret's fans to say, Bret, come back in some capacity, even if it's a, you know, a one-night honoring Bret. It's something we'd like to do. We're contemplating putting out a CD like we did on Ric Flair and so forth with Bret Hart, you know, and we want Bret to help us out with that, and that was one of the purposes of the meeting, and Bret said he would. You know, Bret's legacy is extraordinary, and it's part of the fabric of WWE, and we applaud that, even though Bret and I haven't always gotten along, and Bret at one time perhaps hated my guts, as you say.
And it's fair to say that his popularity in this country could never be questioned. He's a Canadian hero, right?
No question about it.
Yes! I did it! Because I threw it out the first time we were on the show, and I said he's a Canadian hero, and you disagreed with that, because you said he's a WWF hero at the time.
And also a Canadian one.
Okay. I'm just having fun with you. But it would be hard to start a relationship with a guy when you said, if I could do it all over again, I'd screw you again, because it was good for business.
Well, at least you know, well, not necessarily good for business. I don't know if it was good for business. You look back on it, and it was, you know.
Because you
but it was
capitalized
the right thing.
on that brilliantly, though. Like the legacy, to me, of Vince McMahon more than anything would be after you walked out of the Survivor Series in Montreal, you turned what could have been a PR nightmare to a huge positive. You built that as a huge storyline.
Yes, I mean, why not? I mean, you know, as a flexible human being and a flexible businessman, you have to go with, you know, what conditions are. Conditions change sometimes beyond anything you have to do with them, and you either rock with them or you die.
So we agree then, Canadian hero, Bret Hart.
Canadian hero.
McMahon, you are associated more than any other human being with wrestling. Yet you're sitting here, and I actually notice maybe a little different tone in your voice. You talk a little bit more corporate because now you run a public company, right?
Right.
You have shareholders that you're beholden to. Have you changed? Do you like the change? Is it important for you to be taken seriously in the huge genre called business?
I think it's important to be taken seriously as an entertainment company, and we are that. And we have wound up to be the only entertainment company of its kind still in existence and flourishing. So I think, yes, from a serious standpoint, it's a serious business. It's also still and always will be a fun business, and it's something that you have to do with passion, and a degree of levity.
Does it bother you that there are people, though, that because it's wrestling, they don't give it its due in the business sense? They look at it and they say, well, it's wrestling, and they don't understand that you have taken your company to places that guys who run major studios perhaps have never gone, but they look at it somehow that there's something wrong with it. It's dirty, that it's valued less because it's wrestling. Does that piss you off?
Yes, it does. Candidly, it does. And every opportunity that I have, I try to correct all of that.
So correct me.
Well,
I mean, I wasn't saying that,
sure.
but that's what people think.
Well, I don't think that's what people think. I think that's what some people think, and pretty much narrow-minded individuals. But when our goal is to be as good as we possibly can be in all respects. We're concerned with our image. We're concerned, as any public company would be. We're concerned with our product. We're mostly concerned with our fans. And I think that we're closer to our fans than any other entertainment company. We listen to them almost on a nightly basis when we're performing. What do they like? What do they dislike? And of course, the one sound that speaks louder than any others is silence. Because if they don't care, we're in trouble.
Amen to that. How's your health?
My health is fantastic.
I asked that for a question. Not that I don't care, because of course I do care about your health.
You're going to challenge me to a wrestling match.
I'm not going to challenge you to a wrestling match, but I'd be okay because it's fake anyway, right?
I don't think so.
Well, at least the result would be determined ahead of time.
Right.
It would look like you were beating me, then I'd come back to beat you. But my question for that is that if I was a shareholder in your company, one of the biggest concerns I would have would be your health and your longevity. Because if you disappear, God forbid, to me, you are wrestling. How does the company survive without you?
Well, it survives because of my son Shane, my daughter Stephanie, and my son-in-law Triple H, and the extraordinary corporate staff that we have.
And your future grandchild.
Well,
or
yes,
not your grandchild, but your
grandchild
taking it over, right?
Yes.
3 months old?
3 months old. And there are succession plans built in. I mean, my lifestyle, I could kick tomorrow. I doubt it. I'm healthy as a horse. Bodybuilding is my hobby, always has been. So I'm very healthy, and I think I have many more years of contributions, and I love what I do.
So if you were to decide all of a sudden, you know what, I'd like to do something else, and you walked out the door, who would run the company?
Well, it would be a number of individuals that run the company, because
your kids are watching now going, please say me, please say me.
I know. But for instance, I do a lot of jobs, and wear a lot of hats. I recognize that after I'm gone, no one individual is going to wear as many hats as I wear. And the company has grown to the extent that really it would almost be impossible for any one individual to do that without failing. So whereas in terms of the creative staff and things of that nature and my contributions there, that would be one individual doing that. In terms of the corporate standpoint, it would be another individual doing that. So there are at least two people who would do my job.
What would Triple H do? What would his role be in the big picture of the company now? Because I mean, he's your son-in-law.
Well, first of all, he's very bright, and has a great deal of common sense and good business sense as well. So I can't say specifically, other than obviously, his contributions as a talent and understanding production, television production as well, and how it all blends together to make stars. Surely he could have enormous contributions that way, which is the heartbeat of the business. Same with Stephanie right now in terms of, she's in charge of the creative staff. So Stephanie has been at my right hand for so long and whatever, and at first when she first came on, I wasn't too sure she was going to grasp it, and then, wow, she just, really has a tremendous understanding of it now, and the storytelling aspect of what we do. You can have two great athletes, be either boxer, wrestler, whatever it may be, but if there's no story between them, then the public really doesn't care.
Just men in underwear.
Exactly.
Now, women in underwear is a different story, but men in underwear isn't intriguing for many of us. Vince McMahon will take a break as we... I got to say thank you to Vince McMahon. Thanks for doing the show. But also your show and what you brought to our show, I should say, has been hugely responsible for the success of Off the Record, because your roster was available to us right off the bat. All of a sudden, guys were talking from the heart, and it wasn't all a work, and it was one of the huge things for Off the Record. So thanks for that.
It's a good contribution, actually, for us as well.
Excellent. Thanks for saying that as well. Now that we've got the niceties out of the way.
Right.
Hulk Hogan. I want to talk about this in the next show because this is part one. How's your relationship with him?
Good.
Goldberg?
Good.
But neither one of those guys is working for your company, right?
No, no, they're not. Matter of fact, I got a message from Hogan recently, without him contacting me personally, and that was, tell Vince, you know, that I'm training. I feel better than I've ever felt in my life. He had a hip operation. It was successful, and he's squatting now with, being a co-bodybuilder, squatting now with more weight than he's ever had, and he's ready to come back.
Did he say the message really slow the way he wrestles?
I don't know.
And Lesnar and Angle, did you like the thought of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, that's, you know, when you conjure up the image of those extraordinary athletes.
Pretty good, yeah. Vince, I got to cut you off. We'll see you part two with Vince McMahon, the man who is
Don't
wrestling.
cut me off.
Yeah, I'll do it when I want.